So, perhaps just as well. Good afternoon. Thanks for turning out. It's the summer of 1777. British General John Burgoyne is leading an army of 8,000 British, German, French, Canadian, Loyalist, and native fighters south from Canada to capture Albany and cut the rebellious colony in two. In mid-August, he sends a detachment under Lieutenant Colonel Friedrich Vaughan to seize the Continental Army storehouse in Bennington. The raiders find their way blocked by Patriot militia under General John Stark. The standoff on the 14th leads to two hard-fought battles on the afternoon of the 16th, in which the Americans soundly defeat the Crown forces. Around 35 Patriots were killed at the Battle of Bennington, who died of their wounds. The British lost more than 200 men. Today, you'll be hearing from 9 men, some from each side, who fell at the battle and were never able to tell their own stories. You'll also hear from the wife of one of the soldiers. To give the fallen their voices back, we've relied on historical research and our own imaginations. The dead are presented in clothes like those they would have died in, minus the blood. The scenes projected behind them are meant to suggest the places where they died. The fallen know nothing of what came after their deaths. That victory at Bennington led on to victory at Saratoga, the alliance with France, and the establishment of American nationhood. Friends of the Bennington Battlefield, in association with the Bennington Theater, present Voices of the Fallen.
Brothers, I was shot soon after I had crossed the bridge over the river. I did not expect to die here in the hands of the Americans, leading the way for a force of English and Germans on a raid. A raid! And for what? To help the English king with the quarrel between the English and each other? And to take from the inhabitants kettles and cowbells and other English trash. My own horse was laden with plunder. Brothers, listen to what I have to say. Our ancestors have been the caretakers of this great island, Turtle Island. And our seats, they extend from the rising to the setting of our elder brother, the sun. And the Great Spirit had made it for the use of all of our people. He taught us how to hunt the animals for food and use the skins for clothing. He caused the earth to bring forth corn for bread. And if there ever arose disputes among our hunting grounds, they were generally settled without the shedding of much blood. But an evil day came upon us. Your forefathers crossed the great waters and landed here on this island. Their numbers were small. They found friends, no enemies. And they say they fled their own country from fear of wicked men and come here to practice their religion. They asked us for a small seat. We took pity on them and allowed them to sit among us. We gave them corn, we gave them meat, and we taught them how to live here. In return, they gave us trinkets and poison to drink in the form of rum. The white people have now found out our country. Tidings were carried back. More came among us. They called us brothers. and we give them a large seat. They wanted our land. They wanted our country, until we scarcely had a place left to spread our blankets. Sickness and war came upon our people on the river you call Mohawk. Many of our people sought refuge in Granada, leaving our homelands behind. You say you are an independent people. We, as the original inhabitants of this soil and sovereigns of this country, we look upon ourselves as no less independent and as free as any other nation. Brothers, my death by this river is an ill omen for my people. I fear for the years to come.
Yes, Benoni. You may remember in the Bible that Benoni was the name Rachel chose for her son before she died. It means, son of my sorrows, as I must be to my mother now. Everyone called me Betty. My Aunt Deborah would, often, tell the story of our family. Our great-grandfather Tisdale came over to Plymouth in the 1630s and settled in Taunton and was killed by Indians in King Philip's War. His son John and his son, Ephraim, my father, remained in Taunton where I was born in 1748. For years, I helped my father on the farm, plowing and sowing and bringing in the harvest. But I grew restless. I was 27, and there were too many Tisdales in Taunton. New settlements were opening up in New Hampshire along the Connecticut River. I broke away and bought 100 acres in Westmoreland and made improvements. Then came Lexington and Concord, which called me back to Taunton. I served in Captain Soper's company, Walker's regiment, when we pinned the British in Boston 2 summers ago in 1775. I signed the Solemn League and Covenant, pledging my allegiance to the United Colonies, now the United States, in this just and very necessary war. The next threat to New England came from the north. I returned to New Hampshire and joined the town militia as their fifer. I blew a wooden fife I picked up as a boy. I could play you any tune you like, as well as pipe commands on training days. In July of this year, I enlisted under General Stark to oppose Burgoyne. I was one of the first across the mountains. We gathered at Manchester and marched to Bennington. I was in the company under Captain Carleton, ordered by General Stark to guard the cattle being sent to the army at Stillwater. We drove them there without incident. Returning on the morning of the 16th of August, as we were approaching Hoosick, I was in the advance when a party of Tories rose up from behind an old log fence
and fight like a people.
I fell, shot through the lungs, from which my breath will never again muster our men to arms, or play a merry tune.
Eyes, the Lord, ganz in Garaus. Mein Dragonus, die Kampf, das Passieren. My entire command, killed, captured, destroyed. How could this happen? Forgive me! Forgive my outburst. For 25 years, I served as a soldier. See my share of victory and loss. But this generous Burgoyne and Ritzegger trusted me to carry out their plan, to beleaguer the rebels, find mounts for our dragoons, enlist local men to our loyalist cause, and to bring back cattle, oxen, and wagons. We left Fort Edward on the 9th in good order. Bad roads, river crossings delayed us, but at Cambridge, many local men, loyal to their king, flocked to join us. Reaching the mill at St. Croix and the Little White Creek, we drove off the enemy there and took many barrels of flour, salt, 1,000 bushels of wheat. Men we captured informed us that a force of 1,500 rebels had gathered at Bennington, but were sure to flee at our approach. I informed General Burgoyne of this intelligence, also warning that our native allies were not reliable and cannot be restrained from taking plunder at every turn. Along the Walloomsac we marched till we came to a bridge, where I spied the enemy assembled on the crest of a hill. They were not there to attack us. Yet, while they held the higher ground, I would not send my men to strike at them. When they were through, I placed my loyalists on their hill, threw up works on our side of the bridge. I sent my dragoons to the top of the mountain to my left, and had men build breastworks to protect them. Your corps is much too valuable to hazard in some skirmish. In the words of General Burgoyne, remember, dragoons are no ordinary soldiers, but skilled horsemen, elite and well-trained. And finally mounted, they would be the general's eyes and ears. I was sure our positions were secure, and that reinforcements would be arriving soon. And then came days of rain. On the 16th, all was quiet, till mid-afternoon when 3 shots rang out. All around, all at once, 1,000 men converged, their musket fire raking our ranks on every side. Our men returned volley for volley, and our 3-pounders blasted ball and grape. Till our gun crews were killed, and our ammunition spent, I ordered my men to draw sabers sure that the enemy would break. Years before, at Zarinsburg, our saber charge forced the French to run like rabbits before us. But this rabble was made of much stronger stuff and kept coming and coming. I slashed and teared it. The shot found its mark in my belly. I thought of our regiment's motto. In danger, there lurks a fine death. Yet, this mercy was denied to me. Wounded, in pain, unable to fight back, I was stripped of my coat, my boots, my sword, my dignity, and tossed out of a body like a sack of oats. I was taken to a farmhouse, not too far distant, where I was gawked at by soldiers, common peoples, while I waited my fate. But I did not die alone in that house. My ill fortune was shared by a comrade, a countryman, a loyalist colonel that, my vista. God, my
You're robust.
Robust.
You are far from home, my friend?
Very far. As are you.
Far from my birthplace, yes. But this is my home. I swore an oath to it, but not an oath that the rebels would have me swear.
And you pay the price?
Yeah, civil war is costly.
How came you here?
I'm an engineer by training and inclination. I see the world as something to be measured to man's purposes. Calculate the baseline and the angles, and a chain of triangles can connect everything back to its point of origin. My point of origin? I was a bright lad from Brunswick with a knack for numbers, adept at drawing, trained up as a surveyor, a map maker, an engineer, and then drafted by my prince to serve in the British Army during the 7 Years' War. As a newly minted ensign, I was sent to the wilds of North America. In 1760, as a proud lieutenant, I was part of the Royal American Regiment. The forts at Ontario, Niagara, Stanwix, all stand testament to my skills. At the Niagara Portage, I perfected a system of rails that moved supplies up an otherwise insurmountable start. I held that contract for 20 years and amassed enough capital to create a new one. I plighted my troth twice. First, by marrying the lovely Miss Anne Maycomb. Then, in '74, I moved my family to the green, pleasant Hoosick Valley, where veterans of the French and Indian Wars and Palatine Germans were neighbors. But the old Dutch of Albany and their so-called committees of correspondence, safety, were not so welcome. They brought me up on charges of inimical behavior, which were found baseless. I was a retired, half-paid British officer, yet they would have me swear an oath of allegiance to the rebel cause? I refused. I had pledged my loyalty to the crown. To break one oath and make another, just to save one's skin? Could such a man be counted on as anything but a scoundrel? I took the measure of these men, these patriots, shoemakers, soap boilers, smugglers, debtors, and indentured servants, like the three of mine who left me earlier this summer for Colonel Warner. Such men have no respect for order and authority. I wanted no part of their government. I admit, I had agreed not to take up arms against the rebels. But when they threatened my livelihood, my family, my home, all summer long, I quietly enlisted my loyal neighbors, 318 of them, to prepare to defend ourselves. When General Burgoyne called for us, I bade my family farewell and swore my slaves, Juba and Powers, to protect them. Then led my ragtag battalion to join you on the Balloon Center, Colonel Baum. The last fortification I designed was built from fence rails stuffed with flax. A far cry from Niagara's stone redoubts. The rebels ran through our musket fire and jumped the rails, and I sustained this mortal wound. In mathematics, I saw glimpses of the Creator's grand design. What was my part in it? I wonder. My maps of this new world? The fortresses I built? The principles I fought for? Will they endure?
Perhaps the only immortality we can hope for lies in the memories of those who come after.
We Clarks were among the founders of Bennington, and indeed Vermont. I was 19 when we left Norwich, Connecticut, place of my birth, arriving in Bennington with 5 other families in 1761. We were all separatists, new lads, seeking a place we might practice our faith according to our conscience. Bennington was our promised land in the wilderness. My father was a leader in the town and church. I'm his namesake, and like him, was myself inclined to matters of policy and government. I was elected as a delegate from Bennington to the convention at Westminster in January of this year. I assisted my father and Mr. Chittenden in drafting a Declaration of Independence for our state. In June, we gave it the name of Vermont. My father was at Windsor when word came that Burgoyne had taken Ticonderoga. He told me how, during a thunderstorm, the delegates voted to establish a government to serve the people of this state with freedom of religion, where common men can vote, and neither man nor woman should be bought and sold like cattle. All summer long we lived in fear of Indians, Hessians, and Tories. We drilled on the green in front of the meeting house. On the 16th of August, we set out under Captain Dewey to join with Colonel Herrick and his Rangers. We marched in silence 5 miles through woods and across the river, behind the British lines, undetected. We climbed a hill, advancing through the trees until we saw their breastwork and the black of Hessian hats above it. We crept forward and waited. The signal came, and we shot at their heads. Their return fire tore through the trees above us. We aimed at flashes in the smoke. Their cannons blasted, and we heard men scream. Colonel Herrick ordered us to rush their works. All of us charged into the clearing, and a musket ball to the shoulder brought me down. But I did not die. Not then. My friend John Fay did. Henry Walbridge, too. And Daniel Warner, Seth's brother, whose barn I helped to raise last year. For 3 months after, my brother Elijah dressed my wound and cared for me as I lingered, sparing my wife Persis, who was nursing Richard, our first and only child, who was born this April past. I lived to hear the news of our great victory at Saratoga and the surrender of Burgoyne. I died of a fever in November, knowing that the Lord had blessed these enterprises undertaken in his name. God save Vermont and the United States of America.
I know the man who killed me. John Peterson, an old school fellow of mine who married one of my cousins, yet he was my mortal enemy. We both were born in Hebron, 20 miles southeast of Hartford. I was the youngest in a family of sons and was bullied or ignored by my brothers. John Peterson, 5 years older, chose to befriend me. Taught me to ride and to swim. Later, it was he who introduced Anna to me and encouraged me to court her. John married my own mother's cousin, then moved north to Piermont, New Hampshire on the Connecticut River, where new towns were springing up like lilies. Anna and I married and settled in Orford, only 70 miles from Peters and his family, a small distance, but how quickly our paths diverged. Peters owned land across a river in Bradford in what is now Vermont. He was a man of consequence, colonel of a militia, justice of the peace, judge of the court for New York. In '74, he was sent to the Continental Congress in Philadelphia, but refusing to sign the oath of secrecy, he was expelled and mobbed on his way home as a Tory. He fled to Canada, where I heard he was given command of the Queen's Loyal Rangers. I, too, rose to some prominence. Captain of militia, serving on committees of safety and correspondence. It was my duty to prosecute royalists like Peters, and I felt no remorse, for they had betrayed the cause of liberty. Threats and alarms disturbed the summer, the fall of Ticonderoga. Mercenaries and Indians menacing the populace. How fervent we all were to hunt us some Hessians and send some Tories to hell. Our chance came at last. Colonel Hobart made the call, and we all set off to aid John Stark at Bennington. We guarded the stores there for 4 or 5 days, till, on that fateful Saturday in August, we were ordered to advance on a breastwork the Tories had built on a hill near the river. We marched through woods and fields of corn and flax till we came upon their fence rail fort some 15 rods in front of us. We pressed forward under fire. Through the smoke, across the barricade, I recognized him. And in anger, I fired at him, but missed. He fired at me, but missed. As he reloaded, I rushed at him, shouting, "I've got you now, Peters, you damn Tory!" I stabbed him in the chest with my bayonet, but it was turned by a bone. He leveled his piece, looking at me in the eye with an expression of regret, and fired. I staggered away, blood gushing from my belly until my legs collapsed. I watched both sides dispatching the fallen without mercy. I cried to my comrades, "Help me for God's sake! Don't let me fall into their hands alive!" Two men came to my aid, each taking a hand, stooping down low so the flax would conceal them. They dragged me on my back to the road where the wounded were collected, then brought me to Bennington to recover or to die. The townsfolk were kind and accommodating. Abel Sawyer, a neighbor from Orford, remained by my side. I learned that the enemy were defeated, but John Peters was not among the many who were captured or killed. He escaped, and I was relieved to hear the news. Glad that his death was not on my soul. My fever dreams were haunted by that look in Peter's eyes. How easily our tender ties of kin and sympathy were severed. Could there not have been another way? I died defending liberty. Put those words on my grave.
Days I served in this. My second and final campaign in the 20th year of my life. How different from Dorchester Heights, where we camped in the snow till the guns sledded from Ticonderoga appeared on the heights and frightened the British from Boston with nary a shot. Here, we have driving rain and suffocating heat, and we were met with grape and ball thick as hail. We had marched all the way from Leominster to Bennington under the command of my brother John. Now, I confess, the boys complained a bit, being plagued by blisters and fleas, so I took to distracting them with a bit of tobacco I brought along, and a tavern song, and a turn of my flask of rum, till it was gone. We arrived at Stark Camp, and we were sent to picket duty, patrolling the river till Saturday, August 16th. Herrick's men, and Nichols too, marched off to fight the Hessians on the hilltop, our company being held in reserve. All of a sudden, we heard the bursts of musket fire, and the booms of their cannons made us long to join the action. At last, we had word that the enemy was routed, and we were sent to pursuit the remains of their forces. We marched past the men taken prisoner, and the dead, and the dying at the second bridge. We crested a rise of ground, and saw the reinforcements of the enemy coming right at us, with 2 cannons mounted at the front. A belch of smoke and flames and grape shots whizzing past us overhead. We returned fire, reloading as fast as we could. The barrel of my musket grew hot in my hands. We fell back 30 or 40 rods until Major Ram on a fine black horse shouted, "Fight on, boys, fight on! Reinforcements are close by!" Just then, I saw the most remarkable sight. A cannonball had cut a kind of lane right through the mane of the Major's horse. My friend Will and I both had a laugh at that when suddenly I felt a great punch to my chest. For a moment, I thought I'd been kicked by the horse until I saw bright red blossoming in my waistcoat. All I felt was surprise, not pain. I said to Will, who was bent beside, "No, leave me, friend. I am as good as dead. May the Lord have mercy on my soul." The fighting still raged around me, but oddly enough, the din fell away. And the only thing I could hear was a tavern song the boys and I had sung along the way. Why, soldiers, why should we be melancholy boys? Why, soldiers, why, whose business is to die, should next campaign send us to him who made us boys? I can't remember the rest.
I am Private Sid Bobs, a man who died at the Battle of Bennington on the Patriot side as a member of the regiment of Green Mountain Boys who were known for making a noise about freedom. But I wasn't free. I was just allowed to be a soldier in the cause of liberty because the Continental Army needed men like me, even men like me, who were held in a state of slavery. I was sent to Captain Angel to serve in place of Mr. I. Charles and Simeon Grandison, my brothers in bondage, also signed on for the prize of freedom if we won and survived. In the winter of this year from Berkshire, we went to Warner's regiment. What that meant was patrolling to prevent the enemy from having a chance to attack in the Grants north of Manchester. But when their army arrived in July, we left Fort Tight in the middle of the night without a fight. It didn't feel right. At Hubbardton, we fought hard as the rear guard, but were defeated. We retreated to Manchester till we were needed in Bennington. There was gonna be a battle that had to be won, and they were calling us to get it done. We marched all day in the rain and into the night, and dried our firelocks in the morning light. In Bennington, they gave us bread and cartridges packed with powder and lead. There were just 99 of us left in our regiment. But just make a line of us, you'll see why they sent for us. This battle was meant for us. We could hear their cannon calling as we passed along the river to our camp. Each man drew rum and water. We advanced and saw a black man on a horse taking Tories away, tied up with cords. Colonel Warner met us at the bridge. He said that up ahead, the reinforcements were pushing our forces back from the ridge. he ordered us forward to lend a hand and help our men make a stand. When the enemy tried to get wide of me and my company, inside of me I said, I'm going to turn their flank instead. I shot at a man as he shot at me. And later that day, I was dead. As I lay on the ground, I could hear the sound of our victory coming up the hill to me as night fell. But I can tell that living free was a destiny not meant for me. For Charles and Simeon, maybe Mr. Eyes. I'll live on in their lives. I'll live on in your lives.
Marching past our Serene Highness Duke Karl, our battalion left the city of Brunswick in May of last year. At Stade, the English Colonel Faustin inspected us one by one. Each of us, fit for service, took an oath of loyalty to the King. We arrived in Canada in late September. I've never been so glad to set foot on land. We camped at St. Jean on the Richelieu River, where we learned that our army had defeated Colonel Arnold on Lake Champlain, but that campaigns were over for the year. By December, the snows were 3 feet deep. They gave us snowshoes and hats made from the fur of wildcats. The people were afraid of us because of our religion, they said. But we maintained our discipline and drew it all into law. In May, 8,000 soldiers rowed their bateau up the lake. The oars flashed on the quiet bottom. Mountains on both sides were capped with snow. I'd never seen a more magnificent sight in all my life. Nor an army more sure to be invincible. The enemy fled before us at Ticonderoga. General Riedesel, with the Jaegers and 2 companies from our battalion, won the field at Hoboken, though we had 8 killed and 20 wounded. At Castleton, we foraged in the countryside for cattle. And I received a letter from my darling Anne Maria. I kept it in the pocket of my coat, next to my heart.
My inexpressibly captivating and eternally beloved angel, I thank the Almighty who has kept you in good health. But I heard from your dear parents that you twisted your leg on a march. Your treasured letters tell nothing of this occurrence. I was very much pained by this news. Still, I praise the Almighty that you have remained safe from danger.
Next we marched through woods and swamps to Fort Edward on the Hudson. Mosquitoes tormented us, and snakes came into our tents at night looking for food. Lieutenant Colonel Baum was sent with the dragoons to seize the stores at Bennington. Our battalion was dispatched to support them.
I have received all your letters, and thank you, my dearest darling, for the money you have sent. Lisa is a true little angel. She talks of you constantly and has me lift her up to kiss your picture. When money comes, she proudly says, "That is from my father."
We marched past the fields of wheat, corn, and rye, and well-kept houses whose inhabitants had fled. With such abundance, why are the Americans rising in arms against their king? It must be that some few designing men have deceived them and mean to keep the bounty for themselves.
Before the holidays, your dear father sent me from his manor 2 pounds of fresh butter, 3 pounds of eggs, a keg of wheat, 4 young pigeons, and 20 cheeses. You can imagine how fervently he prays that you are well.
We camped for that night near Cambridge. The following day, the 16th, we lost our way, and the horses could barely drag the cannons through the mud. We arrived in the afternoon at St. Coik, north of Hoosick, where we learned that Colonel Baum had been attacked. Our battalion was ordered to advance on the higher ground to the left of the road,
We met the enemy and drove them back. In appearance, they resembled forest bandits and would not meet us in battle, but fled from tree to tree like cowards, while we pursued and kept up a steady fire.
I am glad you encouraged Henrietta to stay with us. She and Lisa are constantly at my side and lessen my sadness. I very strictly obey the rules you gave me and live as carefully as possible.
Across a ravine, they made a stand. Fresh men in ragged uniforms kept coming up to join them, and we were running low on ammunition. They ran to turn our flanks, and it was then that I was hit by a ball that tore through my side. It was a mortal wound, but I had life enough left to hear their shouts of victory amidst the groans of the wounded men nearby.
Our lives are quiet and as full of joy as your distance from me permits. May God keep you. Without the hope to have you home and healthy, I cannot live a moment. It is for your sake I keep myself alive. I am fortunate to say, with never-ending love, I am yours. Anna Maria Frederica Muhlenfeld.
I had done my duty. All that was left for me in America was to die. Oh, my Anna Maria. Goodbye.